If you think about a hub and a spoke, planning it's that central part of what supply chain does, and it actually connects all the stakeholders in an organization, right? So it connects sales and finance to manufacturing. It connects procurement to what our plan is to deliver. It connects service and our customers into what we're choosing to bring to market and how we're choosing to fulfill consumer demands.
Hello, and welcome to Speaking of Supply Chain, where MEBOK experts from around the world unpack the real stories, strategies, insights, and innovations shaping the future of supply chain. I'm your host, Ellen Wood. Speaking of Supply Chain has always been about real-world insights, not theories. And as the industry evolves, so should the voices we bring to the mic. Today's episode is a little bit different. It's about where we've been and, more importantly, where we're going. To help us take that next step, I'm excited to introduce someone many of you may already know from the industry, Christine Barnhart. Welcome, Christine.
Thanks, Ellen. I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
You are known in the industry as the supply chain whisperer. But before we get into that, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your journey and what drew you to supply chain in the first place?
Yeah, it's pretty eclectic. There's like a joke within MEBOK where my boss, Nick, says I'm a unicorn. I'm like, I think I'm more like the Swiss Army knife of supply chain, but really eclectic journey. Started out in engineering. I'm an electrical engineer by education with Whirlpool Corporation. So I spent 12 years with Whirlpool, started out in maintenance engineering, process engineering, quality, and then transitioned into product development. And so was in a lot of operations around the world over the years. And after, that journey, did a complete career shift into supply chain with a company called Mead Johnson Nutrition. You may have heard of Enfamil. So they make Enfamil. I was a Six Sigma black belt, and they had a capacity problem. So they wanted to hire somebody with that background. And I really found when I joined the company, I really fell in love with these really complex problems and complex systems. And I think for me, it was bringing that engineering kind of mindset into the realm of supply chain. So spent 6 years with Mead Johnson Nutrition, really loved it, did sourcing and planning and led global implementations, and had the opportunity to go to a company called Berry Plastics. They're now a division of Amcor, but they were doing a very large global transformation, and that appealed to me. So I went to Berry and part of the Center of Excellence. And what I've since learned since I joined MEBOK is I was a consultant and I didn't even know it, right? Like a Center of Excellence person is like an internal advisor, internal consultant. So got to lead planning and procurement transformation. And after 3 years, they were like, full stop, we're done. We need a break. But I had fallen in love with kind of that pace of change and being connected to the broader market and really kind of looking at, what's the next thing? How do we make it better? Like this continuous improvement kind of mindset. So I did another pivot because why not at this point? And went to Infor in supply chain. So was a strategist for product at Infor, which, most people I think in the industry have heard of Infor, but they're the third largest enterprise planning software company on the planet. And I spent 3 years with them leading go-to-market and product strategy, and then shifted into a little bit different space, still in technology with a company called Nulogy, and really got embedded in the co-pack and contract manufacturing space. So again, like really kind of rounding out my experience in terms of manufacturing and supply chain and operations and whatnot. So, and then 4 months ago, I took a risk and decided that I needed to do something a little bit different, and was connected with the folks from MEBOK and really, loved the work that they were doing globally and kind of liked how things were structured. And it's a little different from what I've experienced with kind of, the big consulting houses. And I love that we're really focused in supply chain. It's a good fit for me. So yeah, it's, I don't know. What am I? Am I a unicorn? Am I a Swiss Army knife? I don't know.
Both. I mean, that is a very unique journey. You've worked across operations and technology and manufacturing and advising. Um, does that shape the way that you look at supply chain challenges?
Oh, absolutely. I
Because you've
mean,
got all those facets and all of those viewpoints.
I have the scars, Ellen, right? Like when you've worked through, kind of multiple businesses, it changes your perspective. So it's not just something you learned in a textbook, it's not a theory, it's not even somebody else's framework. Like you have the wounds and you've tried things that didn't work, you've tried things that do work, So I definitely think it shapes you. I think for me, it's part of why I think I'm pretty practical, very pragmatic, because like I've worked with maintenance and you've worked with at all levels of the company, and I think it's important to kind of get all of those voices together, especially when you're solving complex problems from a manufacturing or from a supply chain perspective.
All right. And so, with all of that insight, with all of that perspective, what kinds of challenges and conversations do you find yourself talking about with supply chain leaders right now?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to talk a lot about planning. I think planning is, if you think about a hub and a spoke, planning is it's that central part of what supply chain does, and it actually connects all the stakeholders in an organization, right? So it connects sales and finance to manufacturing. It connects procurement to what our plan is to deliver. It connects service and our customers into what we're choosing to bring to market and how we're choosing to fulfill consumer demand. So for me, planning is a passion, and that is kind of an area that I'm really focused right now is really helping. The North American market understand what Meebach does in the context of planning and how we're really helping shape people's journey to a better planning outcome. So for me, that's kind of my personal passion, I guess, and
Hmm.
lucky for me, it aligns to
Yes,
where the company is headed as well.
it is very exciting to have you here, I have to say. So, one of your other roles is you lead the industry engagement and alliances for North America. So, how does that fit in? What does that look like day to day with your personal passion?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I've learned over the last decade or so is I'm a connector. And I didn't know that when I was younger, right? I have always been kind of that person that was relationship oriented in every role that I've had. And it's part of what has made me successful. Both within a company and moving within an org, but between companies and orgs. And I think for me, it's about figuring out like how to connect people that maybe you wouldn't even think should be connected to have a conversation. And so for me, the industry engagement piece has kind of grown organically, right? I connected myself to various, subject matter experts, thought leaders, influencers, industry organizations. And so over probably the last 10 or 15 years, as I've moved to different orgs and to different roles, I've just kind of taken those with me. And so when I came to Meebach, it made sense to really own that from the Meebach perspective because I was already connected to Supply Chain Leaders in Action and Association of Supply Chain Management and whatnot. And I had been leading analyst relations when I was at Infor and at Nulogy. So again, I understand the analyst community, have connected to Gartner, Supply Chain Insights, whatnot. So all of that made sense. And then I had been working a lot as I joined the technology side of supply chain with various supply chain partners and had experience growing joint offerings and partnerships and working with others. Because at the end of the day, my personal philosophy is that I think that there's enough issues out there in the world and in supply chain that there's room for all of us, right? Like I think supply chains in general are the mechanism where you actually can lift all boats, right? I think supply chains are what solve those complex problems in the world, and they lift groups of people out of poverty, and they make the world a better place, and they make sure that we're not damaging our planet, right? So supply chains do all of that. I think supply chain providers, technology providers, influencers, analysts, consultants, there's enough to do for us all to benefit. And I think how we help the industry and how we help our customers and clients is by working together in a really meaningful way. So for me, partnerships, alliances, it just makes sense because I'm a connector, and I want to hear what other people are doing. I want to see how they're solving a problem, and then how can we leverage that to our benefit, to our customers' benefit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, does that give you any insight or visibility into what clients are struggling with before it becomes a popular problem that everyone knows about, before it becomes a trend?
Yeah, I mean, I think before it hits the headlines, we see it, hear it, we're already trying to solve it. Before it ever, really is going to come across your social feed, or before you're going to see it in kind of a national publication. So I think and we do that in multiple ways. One is just the conversations that we're having. Like, people coming to us saying, I can't reduce my inventory, or I have all this volatility and I'm not meeting my, customers' requirements, right? I'm out of stock, or I'm not on shelf, or it's taking way too long to get things through my operation. So I mean, for us, I think the kinds of problems that people are surfacing have they haven't changed that much, right? So supply chains still ultimately do the same things now that they did 40 or 50 years ago. I think the pace of change has really accelerated, right? So things are, it used to be kind of this slow kind of progression, and now everything is happening, really, really quickly. There's a lot of volatility. Obviously, we have some global destabilization that, are making people rethink supply chains. Because look, I've been around long enough that I've seen us kind of come full circle, right? When I graduated from engineering school in 96, 95, and went into manufacturing, we were de-integrating, right? So it was like, this isn't a core competency. We're going to send this out to somebody else, right? And so that was when we started to see a lot of specialization and a lot of concentration in low cost regions and whatnot. And now here we are, 30
Undoing it.
some odd years later, and how do we reshore? How do
Mm-hmm.
we retrain US employees to be manufacturing technology employees, right? And or how do we, nearshore, friendshore? And so I think everything is in life is a cycle, and so we're in an interesting spot. I think the other thing that I would say is um people are finally starting to see that it's not actually like it's not a technology problem, and technology is probably not where you should start, right? So we've been in these multiple hype cycles for the last 20 years where we have these really amazing tools, new advanced planning tools, and new, artificial intelligence. And now we have agentic AI, and honestly, it is a game changer. I do work differently now. However, in the context of supply chain, if you haven't made those investments, and by that I don't necessarily mean money, I mean time, resources, right? Like, but if you haven't made investments to really build a good foundation, and that means your people understand why we do the things that we do, and they know enough to question the model, and to ask, is there a better way? But also, do you have the data. And I think a lot of people are swimming in data, but they lack insight and they lack decision support. And by the way, the data that they're swimming in is dirty. It requires a lot of massaging. So I think, I really have been preaching recently about, guys, let's make sure that the fundamentals are good. We have good data. The data is moving through the ecosystem at the speed of business, right? So that means it can't be an Excel spreadsheet that I'm emailing from person to person, right? So, um, like, I mean,
At the
all of
very
those things
least, it has to be
matter.
centralized. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think it's really about, making sure that we're really taking a step back, that we're looking end to end. We're not looking within our individual silos. I mean, all of that is really, I think, where the conversations are centered for most big supply chains these days.
One of the things you do is you are working closely with our MEBOK teams globally, not just North America, although we're so glad to have you. What stands out about some of the diversity of the expertise within MEBOK that you've experienced so far?
Yeah, I mean, it really is amazing when I think about the level of subject matter expertise within MEBOK. Certain regions are really they have a really really deep subject matter expertise in maybe a given industry or a given type of supply chain problem. And I think like you probably see that in other consulting houses as well. What I haven't seen, and I think is really unique to MEBOK, is this sharing across practices, across subject matters, across geographies, right? I'm working on a project and I have a resource out of Canada, I have a resource out of Europe, I have two resources out of the US because those are the best resources for this particular project given their experience and what we're trying to do. So, you don't have those arbitrary lines, I would say, between the various business units. It's not competitive within the company. It's very collaborative and it's very nurturing. And in particular, our expertise in network design and network optimization is just unparalleled. Based on what I've seen, 50 some odd years of experience. MEBOK was really a leader in that space. They've continued to develop in that space. Warehouse automation, planning. So planning, relatively new for North America, but a practice and a level of expertise out of Europe that is very impressive. And then, I've joined now and I have a lot of planning experience. We have others. I think that's the other thing that I've is really been surprising is um you meet people and you start to talk to them and you realize, well, their pedigree is as a practitioner, right? They're like me, right? There's a lot of people that are like me within MEBOK where they have 20, 30 years in the industry. They have the scars, they have the wounds. They've done it from a practical standpoint. And then now they're pivoted and they're sharing what they've learned and they're continuing. I think what sets consultants apart is they like to move fast and they don't like to stand still, right? So they're like people that end up in consulting based on what I've seen, they're the ones they're pretty progressive. They were early adopters. They want to continue to move businesses forward. But doing that in a way that's not theoretical, it's not academic because they've done the work, I think is really something that's unique based on what I've seen.
You know what? I agree, but I also disagree to a point. I mean, we're a company of engineers and engineers love solving problems. And these are just people who happen to have experienced these problems in real life, in real work situations. And they are just like taking it to the next step of, yeah, I'm not going to just exist with this problem anymore. I'm going to go fix it and I'm going to fix it for everybody so that everybody has a chance to, as you said, level up and get to that next point.
We have a weird mix of engineers, and you're right, there's a lot of engineers. Engineers on one side, and then like business masters, informatics, data folks on the other side. So, from my standpoint, I love it. I think it's great. I've been kind of complaining to the academic community for years that I really wanted supply chain engineering because I love the business side and I love supply chain. And I think you need to be able to speak that language, but engineers understand complex ecosystems and really, really complex multi-layered problems. So I really feel like you need both. So from my standpoint, Mibach is the best of both worlds. So
Well, and that kind of leads us into this next area, which is the podcast itself and what our plan is for this year, what we're going to talk about, what we're going to be exploring with our, with our platform here. And so how do you see that aligning with all of these great things that you're saying about Mibach? And I do agree. I love it. I've been here for 10 years and I couldn't agree more, but you have a fresh set of eyes, a new perspective.
yeah, I think subject matter experts, a lot of them are not extroverted necessarily, right? So I'm an outlier. I'm actually an ambivert, but we can get into that in a different episode. But like as an engineer, it's really unusual to have like to see engineers promoting themselves, writing and publishing things in social media and really they have great knowledge and they'll share it one on one, but it never even, it doesn't trigger their brain that they need to, advocate in a broader sense. So for me, part of the goal is really to make sure we're promoting the great experts that we have within Mibach. And within our partner ecosystem, right? Because we have access to some really brilliant minds and great companies doing wonderful work. So I think that's going to be one of the big shifts that you're going to see, not even just in the podcast, but just in how Mibach kind of talks to the market is we need to do a better job of giving our consultants and our advisors a means to share what they know and what they've learned and what their best tips and tricks are in a way that really moves the industry forward.
So those are the conversations you want to have with our internal SMEs and really, filling those gaps in those conversations that maybe they wouldn't have stood up for.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. And you know what? I think I some of them will probably find a few people that have a passion. They'll find their passion for being a public advocate, hopefully. But at the end of the day, if you have knowledge and you don't have this ability to share it, then that's knowledge that kind of dies with you. And I think that's not where we want to be, right? Like we really want to move the industry forward. We want to make it better, easier, faster, more profitable, right? Like that's what we're all kind of programmed for. And I think we do that by sharing freely of what we've learned and what we would not do again.
I know one thing that people have asked me in the past as the host of Speaking of Supply Chain is, how can I talk about what we do without it sounding, very
salesy,
self-aggrandizing? Yeah, salesy. How do you anticipate us doing that going forward without just making it all about us, us, us?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about I would say, you don't have to work with Meebach. We're like, I mean, we want you to, and I think it's fabulous. But at the end of the day, do I think that you need some outside support, advocacy, consulting? Should you be looking beyond your four walls? I would say you should. And so I think it's kind of how you present it, right? Like, look, I transitioned to, the dark side, the technology side in 2018. But my reputation is not that I'm selling, right? My reputation is that I'm going to freely share what I've learned. I'm going to tell you, where the skeletons are in the closet if I need to, like, so I think it's really about being genuine and pragmatic. And it's not about like four-syllable words, right? Like it's not like marketing buzz or sales speech. It's really about like, how do we get our hands dirty and, what have we learned? So I think as long as people are being being themselves and being genuine. Like for me, you would never see me give somebody a scripted talk track and say, okay, this is what I want you to say when you come on the podcast, right? Like
Yeah.
to me, that then becomes a sales exercise, and that is not what we want.
All right. Well, and to your earlier point, the market is huge. There's enough room for everybody in the sandbox to come play. There's enough need in the market for all of these different organizations, for all of these different consultancies, for all of these different integrators to have their spot and find their niche. And with the expertise that you mentioned across MEBOK that you've already, come into contact with or been able to experience through both project work and just meeting your colleagues, I think that, to your point, when we're highlighting those, it doesn't have to be about keeping that or it shouldn't be about keeping that information hidden. We're trying to put it out there. We're trying to, solve these problems, crowdsource some of this information and put it out there.
Yeah. No, you're spot on. And I think, the flip side to that is because, you said I own partnerships, alliances, right? Is MEBOK has always prided itself on being agnostic, right? We're going to advise a client or a customer based on what the best solution is for them. And so I've had several people ask me, well, how do you own partnerships if you're agnostic? And I was like, I can be a partner with somebody because I want to better understand how their solution works or how they do business. And I want to influence, maybe where they're making investments based on what I see. Right. But if there's not a financial incentive between us, I'm still agnostic. Right. And so you're going to see us make some announcements on partnerships in the coming months, which are super exciting. But we're still maintaining a neutrality. We're not working exclusively with any one partner. We're really, looking at the industry and saying, where are our customers leading us? Who is making investments that we really want to understand better? That we want to go to some classes or we want to, pick their brains. We want to talk to them. So I think for us, when we talk about partnership, it's as much about like collaboration and sharing, and it's not about like financial partnership. So I think that is also clearly something that makes, that we're proud of and that we want to maintain, even as we start to grow our ecosystem.
I agree. That's one of the things that I've loved about our stance on partnerships over the years is that yes, we do want to align and be engaged with those, those market leaders in their own right. And of course, we want to use their products when it makes sense and have that ability to deliver that to our clients. But yeah, it's an interesting way to approach partnerships that I think is a little bit unique to me, Buck.
I would agree. I haven't seen it in other places. I mean, even when I've stood up partnerships in previous roles, the first question has always been, "Oh, well, how do we incentivize you? How do we do referrals?" And I will say for me, it's a breath of fresh air that I don't have to worry about that.
So going forward with all of this new and exciting stuff this year, what do you hope listeners feel when they listen to an episode, when they get to the end? What do you want that to provoke for them?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if they are a little bit entertained, right? Like you don't want it to be dry and boring and like hopefully there's at least one part that everybody chuckles and is like, yeah, I know what that's like, right? So I think I think the other part would be if generally speaking, people are like, yeah, that was no BS, right? Like that was just like sitting down and having a cup of coffee or having a cocktail or like, right, like with somebody that I genuinely want to spend time with and talk to because it's an interesting conversation or I learned something or I just felt like, oh gosh, I'm not crazy, right? Like, oh, other people because I think so often we present the good, the glossy, the polished, right? And I want us to have conversations that are real and genuine and that are not polished and that at the end of the day you're like, yeah, I feel that. Like I'm tired, I'm grouchy. I'm so tired of listening to agentic AI and like just tell me how to make something happen, right? Like I don't care. So because I think a lot of people like there's so many messages coming at us so quickly. And a lot of, a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's going to fix all the problems in the world." I don't believe that. Manufacturers move very slowly, supply chains move very slowly. Is our new technologies going to change the way people work? 100% they are, right? But is it going to change overnight? No. And does it mean that it's going to change for the worse? I don't think so, right? Like I know at the turn of the century when we, industrialized manufacturing and we industrialized farming, there were people that lost their jobs, but new jobs were created. And so I think for me it's really about being positive and just real. Let's just be real. Let's have real conversations.
Absolutely. Any topics you're especially excited or nervous about tackling?
Nervous. I mean, I don't know. I think there are things like if something doesn't make you a little bit uncomfortable, or if you're not a little bit uncomfortable in your day to day, then you probably need to push yourself a little more. But um, so for me, it's not the topics I don't think that make me uncomfortable. I mean, like, and you and I work together closely. I have a lot on my plate. I'm a fairly ambitious individual. I don't like to sit still. So I'm committing to a lot, and that makes me nervous. But in terms of supply chain, I think I'm more optimistic about business and where things are headed than I am nervous. I think there's a lot of really hard work out there, but collectively, collaboratively, if we all are in the right mindset, I think that you can eat the entire elephant one bite at a time. So we just have to like get on the path, stay on the path, maintain our attitude and be willing to be curious and optimistic and, try things and have conversations and be vulnerable. I think that's the other thing, right? Like we have to be vulnerable. We have to have these conversations. We're not all making the right decisions all the time, right? Like, so, are we comfortable with failure? And look, I don't like it. I hate it. But some of the best lessons that I've learned, I'm like, I learned because I didn't do it right the first time. Uh, and it would be disingenuous of me not to share that. So my hope is that as people get comfortable with the podcast and as we bring on subject matter experts, like I said, within MEBOC and within our ecosystem, that people feel comfortable sharing and being vulnerable and being, really transparent with the podcast listeners.
Awesome. Well, to our listeners, I do want to say I'm not leaving the podcast. I'm certainly not leaving MEBOC. I'm going to be here, but you will see a lot more of Christine on these episodes going forward, especially this year as she has all of this work that she has been doing, all of these hats that she's been wearing and pulling together episodes and topics to talk about. And she is clearly the best person to have some of these conversations. So I will still be here. I will still be stepping in from time to time, but you will be seeing a lot more of Christine. So thank you.
It's going to be a team effort, Ellen. Like so definitely folks, you're going to get your dose of Ellen. You'll probably get more of me than you want. So, and that's fine. You can say, "Hey, can we get Ellen?" And
absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. So it's going to be a team effort because we have some ambitious goals for this year with our programming, with our business. And I can't wait to take our listeners on this journey with us.
Me too. Me too. Yeah, it's going to be it's already an exciting year. I mean, we just had the articles that came out in Supply Chain Brain, the resource guide for 26. What we had like um three items published for MEBOC, which is super exciting. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of ways for people to engage with us. The podcast is one, our social media is one, but hopefully they're seeing us in the spaces where they get their supply chain information as well.
Absolutely. And with those SMEs, I know we've got some awards that we'll be announcing later on this year. We've got some movers and shakers that deserve their recognition. And additionally, you're just getting all of these people the recognition that they deserve. So very excited.
Awesome.
Thanks for tuning in to Speaking of Supply Chain. If this conversation sparked a new idea or touched on a challenge you're navigating, we'd love to hear from you. With that, I am excited to officially hand over the majority of hosting duties to Christine Barnhart. Welcome to the next chapter of Speaking of Supply Chain.
Thanks, Ellen. Appreciate it. Look forward to talking to everybody soon.